Welcome back to Disturbed Reality. As anyone who follows this channel or organised crime news in general knows, the topic of drug cartels is an ever-moving one, and recent weeks is a testament to that. Both in Mexico and Brazil, major news stories broke surrounding both countries' struggles with organised crime. We should start in Mexico, or more precisely in Michoacan state, in the municipality of Uruapan, a town that was recently rocked by a high-profile assassination and political violence. While ominously celebrating during the Day of the Dead festivities, Carlos Alberto Manzo Rodriguez, who was the mayor of the Uruapan municipality in the violence-plagued western state of Michoacan, and was shot 7 times by an unidentified man on the 1st of November. The 40-year-old was an outspoken critic of organised crime and was attacked in the centre of Uruapan at a candlelit event as part of the festivities. He was taken to hospital where he later died, according to State Prosecutor Carlos Torres Pina. 3 of the bullets struck him in the back and abdomen, the latter wound being the one that proved fatal. A city council member and bodyguard were also injured in the attack. At a press conference the following day, Federal Public Security Secretary Omar Garcia Harfuch stated that Manzo's assailant had been killed by the security forces and that 2 other arrests had been made. The weapon used in the attack, a 9mm pistol, was later linked to 2 other incidents that resulted in 3 deaths and 2 injuries. The attacker has been identified as Osvaldo Gutierrez Vasquez, aka El Cuate, a member of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG. Harfuch also noted that Manzo had been under federal protection since December of 2024 and that 14 National Guard soldiers and 2 vehicles had been assigned to him in May 2025 to complement his security detail of trusted municipal police officers. Mr. Manzo Rodriguez, who some nicknamed the Mexican Bukele, in reference to the tough security policies of El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, took office as mayor of Uruapan after winning that year's midterm elections with an independent movement. Prior to his death, the mayor had publicly appealed to President Claudia Sheinbaum on social media for help to confront the cartels and criminal groups in his area. He had accused Michoacan's pro-government governor, Alfredo Ramirez Bedolla, and the state police of corruption. Mr. Manzo Rodriguez was one of the few independent politicians elected to office in Mexico, and some of those who are conspiracy-minded claim that this may have been a major reason as to why he was such a target. When I say conspiracy, by the way, I don't mean that as a pejorative. Ultimately, Manzo Rodriguez on the surface was seemingly a Mexican politician who was serious about tackling crime and corruption, putting various public sectors such as the police, military and government on blast, with accusations of corruption. Also, the fact that he was independent, young, and building his own movement may have made himself a perceived threat to both the establishment as well as to organised crime. I don't want to make any accusations here, but we know that cartels in Mexico have worked alongside governors, mayors, and various political figures in the past to silence opposition in one way or another. After his death, a protest march was organised in Morelia, the capital of Michoacan, on the 2nd of November. Demonstrators chanted, "Claudia didn't listen and the government killed him." Later, a contingent, numbering in the hundreds, stormed the state government palace. Armed with Molotov cocktails, sticks and stones, the protesters forced the building's main entrance and gained access to the government offices inside. They set fire to some of the furniture, threw other pieces down to the street below, and painted slogans on the interior and exterior walls. The police deployed tear gas inside the complex to disperse the protesters, and the building was placed under police guard. 8 people in total were arrested. A second march in Morelia was organised by students on the 3rd of November. A law student was injured in the eye by a rubber bullet. In the municipality of Apatzingan, Michoacan, another demonstration took place in which protesters forced their way into the municipal palace and set furniture on fire. Manzo's widow, Grecia Quiroz, urged people to avoid violent demonstrations, saying that it's not what he would have wanted. The murder of Carlos Alberto Manzo Rodriguez ultimately is a stark reminder on just how serious the cartel problem in Mexico is, and it also highlights the cost of standing up to the corruption and violence. Carlos should be recognised as a heroic and brave soul who paid the ultimate price for just wanting a safer Mexico. But let's briefly now divert to Brazil, where on the 29th of October, the deadliest police operation against drug gangs in Brazil's history killed at least 121 people, primarily in Rio de Janeiro. State police said that the raids targeting a major drug gang had been planned exhaustively for more than 2 months, and were designed to drive suspects into a forested hillside, where a special operations unit was waiting in ambush. The elevated lethality of the operation was expected but not desired, Victor Santos said, the head of security for Rio State. He also promised an investigation into any police misconduct. Rio police confirmed 121 deaths so far, including 4 officers. Public defenders, however, said that the final count would likely rise to at least 132. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said the scourge of drug violence had to be confronted, calling for coordinated work that targets the gangs without putting police and innocent families at risk. "We cannot accept that organised crime continues to destroy families, oppress residents and spread drugs and violence throughout the cities," he said in a post on X. Primarily, it seems that a gang named Comando Vermelho, or the Red Command in English, were the primary targets of this operation. The Red Command are currently Brazil's second most powerful drug faction, trailing their rivals Primeiro Comando da Capital, PCC, who take the #1 spot. UN officials and security experts criticised the heavy casualties of a military-style operation. The United Nations Human Rights Office said that the killings add to a trend of extremely lethal police raids in Brazil's marginalised communities. "We remind authorities of their obligations under international human rights law and urge prompt and effective investigations," the agency said in a statement. Relatives of the fallen described evidence of summary executions, including bound limbs, knife wounds, and gunshots to the face and neck. Several families reported signs of torture on the victims' bodies, said Guilherme Pimentel, a human rights lawyer working with the families of the deceased at Rio's police morgue. Santos, Rio State Security Secretary, said any misconduct that may have occurred, which I believe did not happen, will be investigated. Rio Governor Claudio Castro said that he was certain that those killed in the operation were criminals firing guns from the forest. He stated, "I don't think anybody would be walking in the forest on the day of a conflict," he told reporters. He described the raids as an effort to combat narco-terrorism. The only real victims were the police officers, he said. Online, there are several videos depicting dramatic footage from the events, including shootouts, rooftop chases in the favelas, and the graphic aftermaths of shootings. This action taken by Brazilian authorities has divided opinion, some declaring it an overzealous use of force that may have affected many innocent people, whereas others see it as Brazil finally may be cracking down on the violent gangs that plague their beautiful country. Regardless, the scenes and footage following these raids are utterly unbelievable. Time will tell how effective and just these police raids were. Ultimately, the issue for the judicial system in Brazil is their checkered past. Accusations of excessive violence against the Brazilian police have been a persistent and troubling issue in the country's human rights record. Brazil's security forces, particularly the military police, have often been accused of using disproportionate force, especially in poor urban areas. Critics argue that these operations frequently target marginalised communities under the guise of combating drug trafficking and organised crime, resulting in high civilian casualties and widespread fear. Reports by organisations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have documented numerous cases of extrajudicial killings, torture and abuses committed during police raids. The problem is deeply rooted in Brazil's history of inequality, corruption and impunity within law enforcement institutions. Many officers operate with little accountability, and investigations into police violence rarely lead to any convictions. Supporters of the police, however, argue that they face extreme danger in their daily work, often confronting heavily armed gangs. However, on the flip side, this does not justify the systematic disregard for human rights. Ultimately, this raid will go down in Brazil's criminal history, and whether it will be looked back on as a turning of the tide in the battle against organised crime, or yet another case of extreme extrajudicial violence, is yet to be seen. Ultimately, time will tell. Let's now delve into the more graphic side of today's video, where we will cover two brutal clips, one seemingly out of Brazil, and the other out of Mexico. But nevertheless, what happens in the actual videos? We will start with the clip from Brazil, as ultimately there's zero context behind it, aside from the fact it clearly looks gang related. The video is in terrible quality, as it's been filmed while it's playing on another mobile phone, so it's somewhat obscured at times. Nonetheless, it's still very disturbing. It seems like the video may have actually initially been uploaded to Snapchat, but I'm not totally sure. As you play the video, you see the clip running on the mobile phone, and you hear background noise from the room where the person watching it is sitting. On the video that is playing on the phone, you see a man in front of a camera who's wearing a face covering, like a makeshift balaclava, and he's carrying a rusty wood splitting axe. On the floor lays a woman, and she's been blindfolded. Initially, not much happens. The man stands over the woman for a short while, before intermittently messing with her blindfold. At one stage, she actually manages to lower the blindfold, and she looks at her eventual killer before the hitman readjusts the blindfold. It's worth noting that there's no sound coming from the video, but you see in it that the victim seems to be talking to her captor, possibly pleading for her life. Out of nowhere, the axe-wielding hitman takes his axe and he smashes the blade down directly onto the woman's face. This causes her body to seize up instantly. He then proceeds to smash her in the face over and over with the axe. He hits her at least 7 or 8 times, each blow progressively destroying her face. By the end of the clip, the middle of her face has essentially been caved in. The video ends here. There's also a still image of a woman's body taken the next day. I'm assuming this is when her body was discovered by the authorities or the public. The murder took place in a wooded area, and in the image, you see the true extent of the damage that she sustained. There isn't much else to report here, unfortunately. Now, the next clip is from Mexico, and there's a bit more context and backstory behind it. The video details the murder of a young man named Abraham Leon, who was allegedly part of the Sinaloa Cartel working under the Maito Flaco faction. His killers obviously belong to Los Chapitos, another Sinaloa Cartel faction who are warring with La Maiza. The video itself is 1 minute and 2 seconds in length, and it has been filmed in decent quality for cartel standards. The setting is that of a wooded area, and the scene has been filmed at night. As you play the video, you are met with the sight of the victim, Abraham Leon. He sits on the forest ground with his hands tied behind his back. He's shirtless and is wearing no shoes. He's already been tortured off camera, his chest is covered in blood, as are his feet. It's worth noting he looks very young, maybe 18 or 19 years old. At the start of the video, he is quizzed and interrogated by the person holding the camera, and the interrogation goes as follows. "Who do you work for, kid?" the Sicario asks. "Manuel de Jesus Gomez Lopez, known as El Comanche," the captive replies. "And what did they tell you?" the Sicario asks. "Well, they promised me things and never gave me anything," the captive replies. "They never gave you anything," the Sicario confirms. "No, nothing," reiterates the captive. "How long have you worked with them?" the hitman asks. The captive pauses, seemingly frozen up, before he splutters, "A few months." The hitman's energy changes and asks in a mocking tone, "Are you a pig?" The captive replies, "Yes." "Well, this is going to happen to all of the pigs," the hitman shouts. At this point, someone standing next to the victim but slightly off camera out of nowhere swings a machete at the victim, aiming at the neck but missing, instead hitting the top of the victim's shoulder, causing a deep laceration. He strikes several more times, again not all of that accurate but causing a lot of damage. The victim is still sitting up as he takes the machete blows. He doesn't scream at all, he just lets out the lightest grunts of pain. The Sicario manages to hit the front of the victim's neck, near the Adam's apple with the machete, causing the captive to grimace before he then lays down on his back, essentially accepting his fate. He is then struck several more times in the neck until a deep laceration is made. For a couple of seconds the Sicario leaves him and you hear the captive choking on his own blood. At this point, however, the Sicario goes back to work. He grabs the captive by the hair and begins slicing his throat with the machete, making the laceration even deeper and also severing the carotid arteries. You can tell exactly when this happens as the flow of blood becomes much more intense. The captive at this point loses focus in his eyes. You see the life leaving them, second by second. Several in the background can be heard insulting the victim, whilst pledging allegiance to Los Chapitos. The Sicario briefly holds the bloody machete up to the camera, before the person filming focuses on the victim, who by this point is drenched in blood. The captive at this time is making those dreadful death rattle noises, and his attempts at breathing become more and more spaced out. He's probably lost consciousness at this point, due to the blood loss, but his body still tries to breathe. As you see the victim bleeding out and passing away, you hear someone in the background digging a grave for the captive, and this is where the video ends. This one is utterly brutal, by the way, and ultimately yet another piece of content from the Sinaloa Cartel Civil War. You know, these sort of videos have been a constant now for over a year, and I can't see them slowing down anytime soon. But anyway, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it, if you can enjoy this sort of content. Apologies for this video being slightly shorter. It is what it is, you know, I've been very busy in the last week or so, running up to when this video is uploaded, but hopefully after that things start to calm down. But I doubt it, we shall see, we shall see. But yeah, thank you for the support guys, it's much appreciated. As always, the links to my other socials will be in the pinned comment, so check those out if you have time, that would be much appreciated. But yeah, as always, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.